Let's talk Richard Allen, the Bridge Guy video, what we see, what we don't see, plus the appeal. All that being said, everything's alleged. Welcome to the point. Let's get to it.
Does this video help Richard Allen in any way? Is there any way to interpret this video that it helps Richard Allen, the man who's been convicted and sentenced to life in prison for the double? Still with us, Court TV senior producer Barbara McDonald, and joining us, the attorney who goes by Lawyer Lee. You know her on YouTube. She was in the courtroom for the whole trial. Lee Wallace is with us. Great to have you. Lee, let me ask you right out of the box. Is there any way to now look at this video and the way it's being enhanced and broken down and figuring out every frame of it, any way to interpret it that it helps Richard Allen?
I think there are a couple of ways. The number one issue has been, is there a third-party culprit? That's what the defense has argued all along, is that somebody else did it. They should have been allowed to present the evidence. So to the extent it suggests that maybe somebody else was there, it can add fuel to their argument that somebody else could have been involved. And one way that happens is when you see Libby across the bridge, she's already talking about going down the hill. When the bridge guy is pretty far back on the bridge, Abby's still on the bridge, and she's already talking about that. That suggests that whoever is on the bridge isn't directing them down. Could have been earlier, or it could be that they were there for a purpose. And that's one of the arguments the defense has made all along, is that they were there maybe to meet somebody, maybe because of the Anthony Schatz catfishing that had happened with Libby earlier.
And that's one of these things that I just don't understand. There seems to be so many other valid suspects in this particular story. In terms of things we don't see, let's just be fair and upfront. I do not see Richard Allen in this video. I do not see any image that clearly says this is Richard Allen. But also we don't see a large group of shadows either. It's my opinion, if you watch this video and believe Richard Allen is Bridge Guy, then you still believe Richard Allen is Bridge Guy. If you watch the video and don't believe that's Richard Allen, then you don't believe that's Richard Allen. There is a piece of me that thinks that they were intending to go down that hill from the beginning. I don't necessarily hear a lot of panic in their voice. Now, I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong. I'm just giving my perspective. I will continue to say on this channel, Betsy Blair's testimony is key. Her description of Bridge Guy is who the actual Bridge Guy is. That's the suspect we need to be focused on. Now, how that ties to Ron Logan or how that ties to Keegan Kline, if they were involved in this particular incident, I don't know. I don't have those answers. I'm not an investigator and all the evidence has been sealed. It's been several years since this tragic incident and we're just now seeing evidence come out. I just can't shake the feeling something else happened here.
That's a very interesting interpretation. I want to take a look at this, some recent filings from Richard Allen's defense. He's appealing his conviction. The defense officially filed the appeal just recently. A motion to reconsider. The defense claims the prosecution let Brad Weber testify that he got home earlier than he did to confirm Allen's confession to the prison therapist. They say the state was in possession of video showing Weber arriving home later than the time he testified to.
And while I may believe Richard Allen is innocent of this particular crime, I'm as fair as I can be. The state replied to the defense's motion about this video. Mcleland's reply was the timestamp was off. So the defense can't actually verify when Brad Weber came and went. But I also think to a degree Mcleland's speaking out of both sides of his mouth, because he often says that you got to keep this stuff simple to a degree, and I'm paraphrasing of course. But the evidence is the evidence. And he gives me the impression he's trying to follow Occam's razor to a degree, meaning he doesn't want to overly complicate this. So if the evidence obviously points to explanation A, then it's explanation A. That being said, in terms of time being off on video surveillance, yes, I could understand a minute or two. But more often than not, AM and PM are reversed. That is pretty common. So the defense's explanation makes the most sense if you're following that principle of investigating. Not to mention that whole incident with the phone jack. Even before that video, the timeline just doesn't add up. Weber's behavior on the stand, as it was reported, was pretty peculiar to me. So there's issues here. There's reason to be concerned.
That could be very significant. And then what we've been talking about in the prior segment, letters from inmate Ricci Davis, an important part of this appeal. The defense is focusing on letters from this inmate Ricci Davis, they believe, proves that Allen is not guilty. Davis has alleged that Kagan Klein and Ron Logan both confessed to him. The defense is attempting to poke some holes in the state's claims that it can't find one of the letters.
And Mcleland in that reply said he didn't receive 8, he received 3. He posted 2 of those letters in his response to the defense's motion. And in his reply, he said that this didn't exonerate Richard Allen. But does the state have the authority to determine what is and isn't exculpatory? For him to say there's validity in Ricci's letters to the state would also mean the state's case is wrong, because Ricci said multiple suspects committed this crime. He told Andrew Baldwin from the beginning he didn't know if Richard Allen was innocent of this, and he didn't want to do anything to advocate for a guilty person. And he also told Baldwin very early on he thought Richard Allen was guilty. And these letters reflect that to a degree. But the state's case is Richard Allen did this alone. So in a way, when Mcleland says Ricci doesn't say Richard Allen is innocent, he is also saying the state's case is wrong. Ricci's letters are completely wrong or they're not, but either way, Mcleland doesn't have the right to decide what the defense gets to use. Ricci said 8, he said there was 3, he's only posted 2. What happened to the last letter?
Lee, what are your thoughts there on some of these issues that the defense has been talking about?
Well, that whole issue around Ricci Davis and what he had to say about other people who had confessed is critically important. And you've got Libby and Abby here on the end of the bridge, and you've got a guy who sounds still pretty far away when he says guys down the hill, and they're already talking about going down the hill. To me, that suggests that they had a plan, and I think that's definitely going to be part of what is going to be argued on appeal. I think the fact that they were already there suggests that there was some kind of disconnect. I do not see, though, and I looked really hard, any shadows of other people around them. You've got Libby talking sort of conversationally, not yelling back to Abby, not yelling to the guy on the bridge, but just saying, okay, so we need to go down the hill, which sounds like she might be talking to somebody right next to her, but I don't see any shadows. So there are just a lot of mysteries around this video.
All right, Barbara, your thoughts and your interpretation. Is there a way that this video could be interpreted to help Richard Allen?
I think it can. One of the other things that was never done by the state at trial was an analysis of how tall Bridge Guy is based on this video. And that was something that the state had a witness who said, well, you know, we looked into it and the margin for error is too great. It's about 2 inches was the margin for error. Richard Allen is 5'4". Many people who have done some analysis on this video from the still image put Bridge Guy's height closer to 5'10", even with a 2-inch margin of error. That may not be Richard Allen.
I find it ironic the state is saying they couldn't do this particular height analysis because of the margin of error, while at the same time they're going to plant their flag on this round found at the crime scene, which, by the way, they don't have any photos of that round at the crime scene. But the state's experts said this round came from Richard Allen's weapon. The problem is they couldn't say it only came from Richard Allen's weapon. They could not exclude other weapons tested because the science they used to match this round to Richard Allen's weapon is not actual valid science. It's a subjective science. Is it a tool that can be used in the future? Yes, it can. It just needs more work. It needs more analysis, and it needs more fine-tuning. I don't believe we should cut the legs out from underneath law enforcement, but we just need to make sure the tools they're using are accurate. That's all I'm saying on this channel. I mean, there's mounds of issues within this particular story. You're concerned about a margin of error while you're excluding half of the genders in the world. To arrive to that crime scene and say we're not going to test any DNA of any female because we believe this attacker is a male is absolutely absurd. To not test the hair found at the crime scene is absolutely absurd. There's loads of issues here. At least that's just how I'm seeing it. Now, if you see it differently, you can let me know down in the comments below.
And if the defense is able to find an expert who can credibly tackle that, that could be one point. But also, you know, I think this video is out now. It's been out for over 24 hours. Lots of people are looking at it, and it seems to cement where you already fall in what you think happened out there. If you think it's Richard Allen, people think this video supports that. And if you don't think it's Richard Allen, people say this video supports that too. So as clear as it is in places, it still doesn't give us the whole picture of what happened.
You know, it's interesting. I'm just looking at that last image because you have the picture, and you can look at two people at once, right? So you've got Abby, and then you've got Bridge Guy, and you can clearly figure out the distance between them. I've got to think there's a mathematical equation somewhere to figure out how tall he is, but
there he is,
that'll be
but
up
they
to
don't
someone
want
to
it to
figure
come
out.
out.
Thank you so much, Lee Wallace and Barbara McDonald. Check out Lawyer Lee on YouTube. Great to have you both here. You know, it's difficult for me to have an opinion on this case because we have not been able to see and hear the evidence. And that's obviously a shame, especially because many have been very skeptical of some of the tactics in this case and the unusual circumstances surrounding them. I hope more does become public because in order for the public to trust the verdict, the system must trust the public to be able to see the evidence.
And on that note, in terms of the evidence coming out, the family has said that this re-victimizes Libby and Abby, and I understand that to a degree, and I don't want to sound callous. But what Vinny said is right. Our system only works if we trust the process, and there just wasn't a lot of trust in this trial. They've also came out and said they hope Richard Allen doesn't go through with his appeal, but he's already filed the appeal, and I'm glad he did. That's his right. They say they understand that that's his right, but they want him to take accountability for his actions. They have the right to believe those prison confessions are valid and accurate. A lot like I have the right to believe what I believe, and you have the right to believe what you want to believe. The biggest issue here is this was a closed trial. I understand that it was technically open to the public, but limiting seats and limiting cameras is an issue, especially when you have an issue of public trust. We'll see what happens with this appeal. Even a case with a strong appeal apparently has only a low percentage of success. So all we can do is hold out hope that at the very least Richard Allen gets a new trial. But if you enjoy this and a more fair, open conversation, maybe check one of these videos out. Y'all be safe now.